Hit Season 2.
Blame him
I think
on that map.
we can understand a little bit more why Stats wanted to kill those sentries at the beginning of the game, but Deer didn't even really force field in time anyways, so we're going into Frozen Temple now, and if Deer loses this, he has another chance, but Stats one win away from getting out of this group in first place.
Yeah, he was the favorite all along, the finalist of Season 1. Let's see if he can close it out here for game number 2. Beginning game number 2 now between Stats and Deer. Down on the bottom right in the red from KT Rollster, it is Stats.
And up to the top left, in blue, his opponent, it is Deer. Taking a very creative strategy in game number 1. Was unsuccessful just simply because of build order choices. And Stats, you could argue that Stats outplayed him, even though he was luckier in builds, because Stats realized that Deer was doing something a little bit odd, and he planned on doing the build regardless, but I think he was like, okay, I can definitely make this work. Otherwise, he might have been a little bit more careful, would have allowed Deer to have more chances to kind of recover and survive there. But he showed the Storm Drop, and that second that happened, like, it got scouted. It got scouted early.
The Warp Prism.
And that changed everything, I really feel, because he's like, oh, what if he commits? He could even commit to like an Adept Warp in. I've got my Mothership core here. I've been waiting. I can warp in units. And the second he saw the Storm Drop, he's like, oh, okay, you're dead. Like you said, exactly like you said.
You know. And I'm sure Deer is not feeling too good about having to win 2 games in a row in a PvP against Stats, who has already proven that his PvP is quite strong. So let's see what Deer wants to do here. He's going to start off with 2 Stalkers. Try to get a bit more aggressive, have those Meteor units that can do a bit of damage. The Adepts are generally used for scouting, you know, if you can get into the base easier, but the Stalkers can fight a little bit better.
By the way, I think out of all the mirror matchups, this is the most interesting choice in even discussion points as to openings. Like, to me, it's like 15 times more interesting than whether he went like for hatch first or pool first, or like what kind of, how greedy he was. This is super interesting because it says a lot about the playstyle and what you want to do for the follow-up. The Stalkers, like you said, they're Meteor, you get more opportunities to defend and pressure later, but they fall down when it comes to scouting. And he doesn't commit to the Shade here because this is likely 2 Stalkers to follow. But 2 different ideas, 2 different concepts, and 2 ways of approaching a game that don't give you like massive advantages. Like okay, if you went for a 12 pool and you went hatch first into 2 extra drones into gas in the pool, you just lose the game. It's not like one of those decisions, but it's very much a stylistic choice. And look what this is going to give to Stats. Okay, he nearly committed there, but he was scouted. That's part of what that pylon's for, as you were saying last game. And here's the power of the Stalkers.
Oh, the block. Nice little micro here by Stats, but after all, he is going to get away, at least for now. Stalker's still on the chase. Going to shade again. The Stalkers will chase them this time, and the Adepts will get away as he cancels those shades.
Stats very famous for his micro. Can't remember who he was playing against, but there was one game. Oh, nicely done here. There was one game where we saw Stats like win versus Blink Stalkers with only regular Stalkers, and I'm like, okay,
against
this guy
Patience or something.
Yeah,
it was like
yeah,
insane.
those Patience. That's right. I'm like, whoa, this guy's just really got it going on. I mean, he knows exactly what to do.
Yeah. And he was really running the gauntlet, man. He was like discovering all new things about the map that nobody's ever seen in that bottom left corner, unless you proxy. But he does eventually get out. And we are going to transition into a pretty even game here. It looks like, very, very slight workload lead for Deer, whereas Stats has the bigger army counts. Not sure exactly in what. Let me take a look. He's got 2 extra sentries.
He also just popped out an Immortal.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to try to put on some heavy pressure with this Warp Prism. Yeah, he's not going to, like, This is not a harass, okay, I built this army to be safe. This is a, okay, you better be ready for this, or I'm going to kill some of your pylons, maybe even gateway at the top of the ramp. And I'm going to take a third base. I do not think that Stats will try to commit to ending the game and getting out of the group in first place off of this push. But he's going to look for damage and a tempo lead that will lead him into a faster third. He's gonna force his third base onto the map with this push, this pressure. Deer does have a pylon at the ready, and all those sentries you were describing. There's the overcharge. Second and third pylons being added here. If Stats wants to really commit to this, faster.
He needs to force field more too. He is going to try to commit to it, but ends up just taking a bunch of damage. Forces some force fields out of Deer, but there is more to come.
Yeah, and Immortal has popped out already, so the Immortal count is even, and 2 more pylons just finished, despite the fact that he killed the first one. And he can elevator, but it's an awkward angle. He's taking too much damage. I think now's the time to make that third Nexus.
Oh, he wants that Immortal. He's going to try to focus it down. Deer focusing down the Immortal, but it gets the barrier back.
The barrier is so well placed there for Deer as well. He's so patient, waiting until the last second to pop that. He doesn't have a Warp Prism though, so he can't lift it.
And eventually it does go down. The micro there from Stats into the Warp Prism with that Immortal. It looks pretty huge.
Oh, the wall is not tight. This is a big problem. It looks like Stats wants to try to potentially end the game off this. He's going into Glaives. He's not making a third Nexus. He doesn't want it. He's going to back off for now, but he still doesn't even have a probe out there. 4 more gates coming up. This observer will be killed. It's actually pretty huge, as that will not allow him to know if Deer is taking a third base or not.
No more observers on the map too. If Deer wanted to get really fancy, he could try for Dark Templar here in a bit. But it looks like he's not going to just yet. Well, although he does have the Twilight Council on the way, there is still a possibility. But it's very obvious that Stats, with that fight, he's like, okay, I got a very slight advantage here. I think I can end this off the back of a Glaives push.
Yeah. Okay, there's that third Nexus going up. Very unbeknownst to Stats, because he doesn't have that scout. So the observer died. +2 started. So far, that's all the Twilight Council's been useful for. Okay, as I say that, he adds the Glaives.
No forge at all for Stats. He doesn't even want upgrades in terms of, you know, attack or defense here.
He wants to hit really quickly. He will be fighting against the +1, but he is going to have the attack speed upgrade, which is obviously attack speed upgrades are way more powerful than attack upgrades.
And this is exactly what Hero was talking about. Look at the army of Deer. It's all Stalkers and Immortals. There's like 3 Adepts, and you can just shade in here, and all the Adepts, they're not going to take that bonus damage. They can fight so well with the Glaives, and that's exactly the fight he wants to take.
Here's the shade, and Deer was way too far out. The Nexus, by the way, not canceled here. He's still committed to it. 2 pylon overcharges. Some of these Adepts very low, but they do survive. The next warp in may be the death of Deer. He has +1 attack. He's going to try to rely on that, but these overcharges are going to fade at the exact time that this shade happens, and that is terrible here.
Another overcharge. It's his last. He can just focus that down immediately with the Immortals, and that is going to be it. Stats is going to get out of this group.
That he will. That should be it. Game over. Deer going to have to play that consolation match. GG.
Takes it there in much cleaner fashion than his games against Bomber. Looking a lot more solid in the PvP matchup.
I think he was really focusing on it. If you're worried about PvT, I think there's a reason why you could be if you're expecting to face Gumiho. Stats correctly predicted, at least this is my opinion, right? Okay, so I think correctly predicted that Deer was going to go up. I didn't think that was going to happen. But against Bomber, you're probably just fine. Like, you probably don't really have to worry about it. And as a result, Bomber versus Gumiho will be our next matchup here, the losers match, to see who goes up against Deer. So we will have a TBT. And before that, we are going to have an interview